Welcome to Jets Rewind. I'm Marty Schupak in Valley Cottage, New York. I'm joined by Ralph Sharega in the beautiful suburbs of Boston, Belmont, Mass, where the leaves are gorgeous, and Ralph just came back from a nice run. Ray Clifford, the star of the show, he's on a well-deserved respite vacation. He's got some friends in from out west. So, Ray, hopefully you'll be with us spiritually and all that, and we'll have a beer on us. I know they like to carouse at different pubs with some beer. Ralph, how you doing? And then I want to do some house cleaning.
Well, I'm still very irritated over that game on Sunday. And as I was just saying to you before, thank God for the Knicks trade because I was just totally focused on that the last couple of days, totally forgetting about that awful, awful game that the Jets played. It's just, I hate that to me, this game bothered me more than the San Francisco game.
Oh, of course.
Yeah,
So
it's just,
wonderful.
oh,
Yeah. All right. A few things house cleaning. Then I just want to go over some other things. I did a little research. There's a number of players coming off the 4-week injured reserve. Kenny Yeboah, Wes Schweitzer, Zaire Barnes was on the list, Ralph. I didn't even know if I knew that.
no, I didn't either. No wonder
Yeah.
he wasn't making any plays.
uh, Lecky Fotu.
Yeah, interesting. We got to talk about that.
Okay, put it down. And also, he wasn't, he had a special designation, but apparently he could come off Jordan Travis, but they're crazy. The quarterback that they got in the fifth round. I would just redshirt him for the year. Okay, now, of course, all Jet fans have heard that Devontae Adams just within the last 24 to 48 hours requested a trade. Mike Florio, and of course, he's always tied into Aaron Rodgers, but Mike Florio listed some teams he thought would landing spots. He listed the Jets, the Bills, the Steelers, the Colts, the Chiefs, the Commanders. I don't know why the Commanders are on there. The Packers.
Commanders are suddenly a player now in this league.
I know, Ralph. I told you about Jordan Davis. I mean, I'm sorry about Jaden Daniels.
Well,
You were
you're
skeptical.
a
Yeah,
Sun Devil fan.
Sun Devil.
I'm still, I'm going to take on the channel my Ray and say I want to see more of him before I
That's
put him in
it.
the Hall of Fame.
You're taking the JD Vance approach. Good for you. Anyway, I did a little research on some team penalties, and we'll get right to Ralph has a quick Viking question. In the league, team penalties, the Houston is first. They have 40 penalties. The Jets are tied for eighth with the Lions. They have 31. With false starts, the Jets are tied for fourth with false starts. Offsides, the Jets are second with three. The Browns are first with five. And this is interesting. Unnecessary roughness, the Jets are tied for first with the Saints with four. So, what do all these stats mean? I mean, I did a 2 Minute Tuesday and I mentioned that what characterizes the New York Jets, and I said lack of discipline and not being prepared. I really believe the penalties reflect the Coach Robert Saleh, who like I said, I'm getting to hate him more and more. But we're going to get to all that. But first, Ralph has I guess you call it a what?
This is just a Viking question that you can answer immediately. You probably know the answer, but it's fun. Who leads the Vikings defense in tackles this year?
Vikings defense and tackles. It's got to be a former Jet, right?
Yes, it is.
Um,
It's like
Frankie Luvo isn't on that team, is he?
no, he's not.
He's
But
not.
it's as you say, it's like this bad penny that keeps turning up.
Okay, go ahead. Who is it? I give up.
Blake Cashman,
Blake Cashman. Oh
who's
my
back
God.
home where he belongs in Minnesota. So I guess Bill Belichick will say, I guess the Jets were the only team that didn't like Blake Cashman.
Blake Cashman, I think he was a fourth or fifth round pick.
Yeah,
Every other game, he would throw out a shoulder.
I
He ended
know.
up on Houston. He played, I believe, for the University of Minnesota.
Well, he was leading Houston in tackling, I think, last year. This guy, something about the green and white uniform. You get injured,
It's unbelievable. All right, Ralph, first thing on the agenda, Devontae Adams, he requested a trade. I mean, we all know that Aaron Rodgers loves him. Do you think the Jets should pursue him?
I hear all these people who follow football their whole life saying, oh, they got to get him. I mean, the Jets' problem is their offensive line. They can have Devontae Adams, Randy Moss, Jerry Rice, Larry Fitzgerald. If their offensive line plays like that, forget it. And they're blaming Rodgers for last Sunday, and it really wasn't his fault either. The offensive line was horrible. It looked like, the Zach Wilson days where he gets the snap and he immediately starts running backwards. If
No,
they don't, yeah.
no, Ralph, just inter but though we'll admit, he made some nice throws, but he did not have a good game, Aaron
He
Rodgers.
he didn't have a good game, but he was under duress all the time. And a good pass rush makes great quarterbacks mediocre, no matter who they are. I saw it happen with Mahomes in the Super Bowl, Brady at times. It's just a fact of life. And if the Jets don't clean up their offensive line, their season's going nowhere this year. So
Right.
I think if their offensive line blocks well, I think they have enough receivers and tight ends to be a perfectly good passing game.
Right. I'm not really high on him. I think there are so many other problems. And it came out that Boomer Esiason on Monday said there's some sort of schism between Aaron Rodgers and Robert Saleh, with it. He says it's reaching a boiling point. And Boomer's pretty good at this stuff. He knows people in Jets organization.
Well, one of our topics is about that, about the Aaron Rodgers hard count and how the Jets keep jumping off sides.
Let's get to that right now
Yeah.
with the hard count. And I'll start my feelings about the hard count. It should not be a controversy. It should be something that's disciplined. It should be something that they're used to. The hard count is a great weapon. I always said when Tom Brady was on the Patriots, he did two things great. One of the things he did was his hard count. The other thing, he was a master, him and Belichick. When other teams would switch personnels, he'd have a quick hike and get 12 men on the field. So you could use it as a weapon. There is no excuse at this point for a guy like, who's the left guard? What's his name? Stinson?
Simpson, yeah, who keeps
Simpson
doing it.
jumping when they're on the goal line. There's absolutely no excuse. It's a weapon. The Jets have to really be more mature about it. I think it's ridiculous. And I agree with Aaron Rodgers when he mentioned in the press conference, post-game press conference, you could hold the players accountable.
Yeah, Chris
It's
Salas says, well, we got to do something about it. And Aaron Rodgers says, how about accountability? And I think this is where the schism is. And again, another topic we're going to talk about with Salah is that will, dovetail into this in the next segment. But I'm not surprised. I think the bloom is off the rose, and Aaron Rodgers realizes that Salah is a flawed and inadequate head coach, and this season has the potential to blow up. It really does.
it's funny, Ralph. I was just thinking, and of course we're all celebrating the New York Mets. They had a wonderful first game against Atlanta, and they won yesterday against Milwaukee. But I could just see the Jets getting blown out, and Robert Saleh going to Woody Johnson saying, "Look, if you're going to fire me now." Because it reminds me of Willie Randolph when he was in San Diego. He went to the manager, or I'm sorry, the owner, and said, "If you're going to fire me now," before they went out to. So it kind of reminds me a little bit, but we'll see what happens. I actually think they might bounce back. But Ralph, the question was on the hard count. What's your exact feeling on the hard count?
Oh, I totally agree. I mean, the funny thing is, I don't think Rodgers, you can correct me if I'm wrong, has actually drawn a penalty from the other team this year. Do you remember one? Because it's ironic that the Jets keep jumping offside, and they work with him all week on this, and yet the defense hasn't been drawn offside. So I think it's ridiculous. It's just another example of. I mean, who do you blame on this? Is it Keith Carter? Is it the players? Is it Salah? I mean, it's a systemic thing with the Jets. But I'm on Aaron Rodgers' side with this. I mean, these guys are professionals. I mean, he's not the first guy to do this.
Well, Ralph, I just want to say if there's any issue involved with Robert Saleh, Marty will probably take the other side.
I know.
It's but anyway, all right. Biggest concern about the Jets at this point, and I'm going to start, and I just think it's the status quo of the way they start a game on offense and even on defense, only blitzing like 6 times last game. And I'll give you an example, and I know if Ray was here, he'd shake his head, and you won't agree. I said on 2 Minute Tuesday, they got to shake it up a bit. And I know our quarterback's 40 years old, but try a no huddle offense. I said, let's bring up Adrian Martinez and put in a little package, shake things up a little. Everything is the same. I mean, except for the Patriot game, it's just too much of a status quo. That's my biggest concern. And also the penalties, and not just penalties, and I mentioned they're aggressive penalties, these stupid, dumb penalties.
Well, when you say the Jets were tied for first
Unnecessary roughness.
unnecessary, that's stupid penalties, that stuff, and that doesn't surprise me that they're tied for first in that because they've had a lot of those stupid penalties. Some penalties you're going to have to live with over the course of a year. When a guy, a borderline pass interference or whatever, but these unnecessary roughness penalties are dumb. Irv Charles had a couple of them.
He's had two.
Simpson's had one, and I think Clark. Yeah, I'm not surprised that they're first in that.
So my biggest concern is just keep staying with the same status.
Yeah.
Ralph, what's your
My
feeling?
concern is the offensive line. The Jets will go as far as the offensive line this year. If their offensive line is solid, I think they'll make the playoffs. If it's not, they're not going to make the playoffs. I think it's that simple. Their defense is good enough. It's not great like it was the last couple of years, but I think it's good enough to give Rodgers time. He's got enough weapons if they use the right weapons, which is another issue. And there are a lot of issues. I think the coaching staff is an issue. I think you're right. There's a funny thing. I don't know if it's just that we've been watching the Jets so much, but I feel like I know what they're going to do on every play offensively. I feel like if I was a defensive coordinator, I could call them. I could be on top of every one of their plays. Even when they try and do something different, it's like they're going to do something different because it's predictable at this point, and then they'll go back to the other thing. So yeah, that's an issue too. But to me, if that offensive line doesn't get straightened out, the season's going to spiral out of control.
And when I say status quo, I'm also including the use of personnel. I mean, we've been through this Braylon Allen versus Brees Hall over and over again. But I also mentioned, Ralph, on 2 Minute Tuesday that I think the Jets, Xavier Gibson, I don't want him. I think he's good returning punts. I don't want him returning kickoffs.
I heard that, and I agree with you. I feel like he gets a little shy when he starts running them back, the kickoffs. Can't blame him; he's small, but I think Isaiah Davis will be. I'd like to see him do it. He's physical, and he's just bigger, and I think he'll run into that wedge or whatever they have now.
What What about Izzy? Is it worth bringing him up on 53 man?
I don't know about Izzy. He's not a physical runner either, but I'm trying to think of who else they could use. Maybe Corley. I might try Corley. Yeah.
I want to see Corley. I mean,
Yeah.
we put him down and all this and all that, but I think it's time we see him. I mean, we like Gibson, but besides Gibson's return of a punt against Buffalo, we all have high hopes for him. I don't think he's been anything special.
No,
That's
he hasn't been anything special. Or once in a while he'll make a play and you go, "Ooh, he's always close to breaking that." But no, I think I have something about Corley later on in the show. But
okay. Right. Ralph, we talk about, loyalty to players. And I remember the old coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers years ago. What was his name, Ralph?
Chuck Noll.
Chuck Noll, he said, my biggest mistake was being too loyal to the team, the players that got me to the Super Bowls. He said, I didn't learn to just cut ties. And I guess Robert Saleh seems that he's loyal to a fault. And is it going to ruin the season, him being too loyal? Because I was looking at some tape and thinking about it. I agree with you. Greg Zuerlein, even when he makes field goals, they're not like right down the middle. They're pretty close. And they
Very
had
shaky.
a
Yeah, it's
guy,
very shaky.
Austin Siebert, in preseason. I mean, he was lights out and he was picked up, as we mentioned last time, with the Commanders. He's doing great for them. So I guess the question to you is, you think his loyalty is going to kill the
Well, I
season?
think it cost him the last game because of the kicking and also because he kept Brees Hall in there on the goal line situation where everyone on the planet was saying put Allen in except for Salah and Hackett. I don't know what they're thinking. You know, Marty, for the last 2 years, we've been joking, but it's really true. Whenever we kind of start complaining about something, it takes them about 3 weeks. They're behind the curve by about 3 weeks. So we'll see if this week they figure out the Allen situation. But I have a couple of anecdotes about my all-time favorite coach, Bill Parcells. And the first one is that when he took over the Giants, he had been their defensive coordinator. And his first year as head coach, he won 3 games. And he said after that, he said, I realized that I couldn't have the same relationship with my players that I had when I was an offensive coordinator. And he was able to flip the switch and change. Salah clearly hasn't done that. And that's a problem. And the other thing, the other Parcells story is that when he took over the Jets, I think he looked at the personnel and he said, I have to make a statement to these guys. And he picked one player who was a veteran on the team, who'd been a solid player, but he had kind of a weak year the year before. And he was one of these guys like Solomon Thomas, who's like, always there, never, even wasn't doing that great, but he was like kind of a coach's favorite. And he cut him. It was Marvin Washington. And I think and it was sending a message to the rest of the guys who, from the Rich Kotite era, saying, you play or you're cut. You don't have a place on this team just because you've been there for a few years. And I think that's another problem with Salah. And we talked about it with Zuerlein. In preseason, he was giving Siebert, or is it Seibert? How do you pronounce his name?
I pronounce it Seabird. It's
Uh-huh.
Siebert.
Yeah. And there were a couple of times when they could have gone for like a fourth and he let him kick the field goal. And they asked him, why did you just try to do something? He said, well, I wanted to give Siebert some film so other teams could see him. It was like, it didn't matter what Greg Zuerlein did. He had the job, even though Siebert was kicking better than he was. That's a problem.
That's a
And
problem. And as good as he's been, Ralph, I think you, Ray, and myself will agree. The lifespan of a kicker on a team is not that long. The fuse is always burning. It reminds me of relief pitchers in baseball. We've always
exactly. You
so
never know from year to year with them.
you don't know. And it's a mistake. He's held on to Zerline too long. I think they really should look at other kickers right now. I don't know who's out there, but
Well, I
Jack.
think if he has another bad game, they're going to bring some guys in. They'll try him out, and then they'll just kick him aside as usual. That's seems like his MO. But
You talk about Bill Parcells because he was the great football coach, psychologist. Something like this, he wouldn't hesitate to bring in kickers, and he would tell like his assistant GM, he says, and make sure Zerline knows I'm having five
yeah,
kickers come in. Another very good Bill Parcells story was when he wasn't happy with the way Jumbo Elliott was going, and he pulled before practice. He pulled Taylor. What's his name? Who's the great linebacker?
Lawrence Taylor. Yeah,
Lawrence Taylor aside, he said, listen, LT, I want you to rough up Jumbo Elliott and you have to get him to fight. And sure enough, he got him into a fight, a little scrum in the practice, and Jumbo Elliott had a great game his next game. All right, let's move on. We're going to get back to Garrett Wilson, Ralph, right after the next question. And I guess Brian Flores, he's on Minnesota, the
he's
coach.
their defensive coordinator this year. He was on Pittsburgh last year, and he got a promotion to defensive coordinator for Minnesota, and he's really doing well. Yeah,
He never should have been fired
No, he got a raw deal in
Miami. He
Miami.
got a
Yeah.
raw deal, though the Miami coach now is one of my favorites. And I guess the question is if we get rid of Robert Saleh, would you be interested in Brian Flores? And just a little background, because I have a weakness for New Yorkers. He's from Brooklyn. He went to Poly Prep High School, and he also went to Boston College.
Unfortunately, he was a Giant fan as a kid and a Met fan.
Right, and the former Giant running back was a Jet fan, who's on the Eagles right now. What's his name?
Saquon Barkley. Yeah.
Saquon Barkley. They're huge Jet fans. And if you remember, Ralph, I'm going to have you answer the question first. But last year, and you and Ray questioned me. I said, I want the guy who's down in Dallas, Dan Quinn, as the head coach. I want a guy
I
like
remember. Yeah.
coach. I remember that, and I remember Ray was saying he wanted a offensive minded coach.
Right. Yeah.
Coach, I don't think you need it. You just
Yeah.
you have to have a different type of personality.
Yeah. A good coach is a good coach. Parcells, he was a defensive side of the ball his whole career, but he was brilliant with quarterbacks. He wasn't a schemer, but like you said, he was a master psychologist, and he got quarterbacks to play their most disciplined. For Bledsoe is so much more disciplined. The minute he left, he got sloppy. Testaverde had his most disciplined years under Parcells. He knew how to get the best. Sims, he used to drive crazy, but he got the best out of Sims too. You don't have to. And this guy, Brian Flores, he just has the look of a coach. He's a no-nonsense guy. And I just think I think he's going to be a terrific coach. The big problem with him, of course, he's got this lawsuit against the NFL, and I don't think the owners are going to go anywhere near, and they're not going to touch him. I don't think Woody Johnson has the nerve to do it. I would do it if I was an owner, because I just think this guy, he just gives me a vibe as a really good coach. When he was in Miami, his first year there, they tried everything to tank that season because I think, ironically, Tua was the guy who was going to be the first pick until Joe Burrow had this great year. But they got killed in the first 6 or 7 games, and he would have nothing of it. And he got that team to win 5 out of the last 7 games when the GM was doing everything possible to tank it. And I don't think the owner ever forgave him for that. And then the next 2 years, he had a winning record, I think, over the next 2 years. So, and, the guys from the Belichick, I know a lot of Belichick's coordinators and assistant coaches haven't done well, but I think this guy is an exception. Anyway, I doubt the Jets are going to get him, but it's just a thought. And the reason I bring it up is because we're already thinking like this is it for Saleh, which is unfortunate.
Right, but Ralph, one good thing I just want to mention, it's the first week in October, and Marty Schupak has not been on the draft simulator yet, which is the first time in about 5 years.
I have looked on the mock draft a couple of times.
Okay, I have. You gave it. Quick question. Again, this is Jets Rewind. We talk about the Jets, but when you're talking about Brian Flores, I'm just wondering, was there a reason why he went from Pittsburgh to Minnesota?
Yeah, because I think he got a bump up. He was not a coordinator on
okay.
Pittsburgh. So
Okay, he got a bump up.
yeah.
I'm just wondering if Woody Johnson went to him, just speculation, and said, "Look, I'll give you a 5-year contract, guaranteed, but you have to drop the lawsuit against the NFL." I wonder if he would do it, something like that.
I was thinking about something like that. Now, also a lot of people are saying, because he is a hot commodity. The hottest commodity, obviously, is Ben Johnson, the offensive coordinator of Detroit,
Right.
who will never come to the Jets. He'll get so many offers, and people are saying, well, Brian Flores, if the Jets bomb out this year, Rodgers will leave, and the Jets have no quarterbacks. I think Brian Flores is the type of guy who says, you give me a team, I'll make them competitive, and we'll develop a quarterback. Plus the fact that he's not going to get a lot of offers because he's radioactive in the league right now. So that's a thought, Marty. It's an interesting thought.
I like the thought, Ralph. I always liked him. I really, a guy like that, no nonsense. I like it. He's got the Marine temperament, if you know.
Yeah.
All right, Ralph. We're going to talk about Garrett Wilson and the interview, but another Garrett Wilson question. Who is the bigger disappointment this year, Garrett Wilson or Brett Beatty, his childhood friend who's on the Mets?
It's a fun question because Beatty's on the Mets and the Mets are doing so great now. Beatty is one of these guys with a big lefty swing. I think it's going to take him a few years to learn probably how to hit the curveball or whatever. He'll probably eventually be a good hitter. Garrett Wilson to me is the bigger disappointment because I'm not surprised that Beatty's having trouble, but the Wilson thing is, what is it about Garrett Wilson? He has controversy swirling around him constantly. He's really a character. In a way, I feel sorry for him because this was supposed to be his breakout year, and it's just been anything but. We're talking about the comment he made was it Boomer he made it to? Or I forget
I'm
who.
not sure, but go ahead. I don't think it was Boomer, but go ahead.
Yeah, he was, well, he wasn't complaining, but he was saying how he watches games on Sunday and he sees all these other teams and all of their creativity with their passing game. And he says, we don't do too much, And I mean, I feel the same way. It's like, why aren't these guys open at all? It's just something's wrong. And I think he's on to something. And I don't know if it's going to mean a change or not, but it's just another thing in the column of things to worry about with the
Right.
Jets.
Garrett Wilson probably sees Malik Neighbors every game getting between 8 and 10 receptions. Now he always drops a key one, which is unbelievable, And he's saying, "What? I'm playing with a Hall of Fame quarterback. What do I have to do?" But of course, on the other side, we both agree that the number one defensive back is always on him, and the safety is always shading over to him. I think that might change the way if as long as they give Mike Williams, the best receiver on the team right now, more repetitions. I really believe that. It's funny, Ralph, and we talk about the Mets. There are a lot of Met fans, and Troy Taylor had an incredible at bat. I don't know if you saw or listened to
Yeah,
it.
like 12 pitches or something
It
like
was
that.
just phenomenal. I was listening to it going crazy. And it reminded me of a number of things. I remember Sean Dunston had an at bat like that years ago. And also, who's the guy? I always forget that. I'm forgetting names more and more now. On the Yankees, who was on the Red Sox. The
Johnny Damon.
Johnny Damon had an incredible at bat against the Phillies. But it's funny listening. I can't tell you how many people have mixed up the name Troy Taylor, the Mets, and Tyrod Taylor, the Jets. Listen to host and people calling into talk radio. Okay,
Well,
let's.
I just got to tell you something, Marty. The Jets, many, many years ago, drafted a quarterback out of California named Troy Taylor. So
Yes,
this could be, maybe he's related to him. Who knows?
never know. All right, you can have some game questions, Ralph, over and under. Can I turn it over to you at
I
this?
don't have the list in front of me. You better read it.
Very good. Prepared as usual, Ralph. Okay, here we go. All right. Will either Malachi Corley or Leonard Taylor play on Sunday? All right. I'm gonna say I think it's Malachi Corley's. I think they're both going to play, but I think Malachi Corley is going to play. I
Well,
think,
here's the thing. You mentioned the guys getting off the injured list. The guy Lakey, Lukey, whatever his name is. Uh,
uh, but
I
so
think,
too.
yeah, I think he's going to take up a spot, and I think maybe Taylor gets bumped again, which is pretty irritating. They had this guy Bruce Hector, who they just pulled off of waivers in a practice squad, and they throw him in the starting lineup. I looked up this guy's numbers. He's been in the league 5 years. He has half a sack. Leonard Taylor, his first game, like it's about his 10th play, he gets a half a sack. But what are they thinking? I mean, this is just another example of going so conservative. This guy Taylor, they got to develop this guy this year.
And I know it's a different position, but Ralph, I'd said on this 2 Minute Tuesday, I would get rid of Tack McKinley if he's taking up a roster spot. I mean, and see what's out there, free agents. This guy's been a waste. He had a great preseason, but have you seen anything constructive during
I've
the
seen more out of him than Eric Watts. Eric Watts didn't belong, doesn't have any business being dressed. I would give Tack McKinley another couple. He's playing hard. He isn't getting much done, but you can say the same thing about Michael Clemens, and they're not going to do anything with him either. So
right?
I'm willing to give him a couple more weeks if you're not.
Yeah. Okay. So I think Malachi Corley. I think this is the week we're going to see it.
I kind of agree with you on this. let's hope we're right because
Yeah,
we got to see what this guy can do.
and you brought up, I would say Leonard Taylor Wood, but now that you brought that up about Fotu, Lecky
Yeah.
Fotu, or Lake Guy Fotu, so that's a question mark. Who has more rushing attempts, Hall or Allen? I'm going to start. I'm going to say Hall, and I don't care about that. I just want it to be fair and to use them at the right moments. I don't care if Hall has 15 rushing attempts, Allen has 10. It's where they use them and that you change it up. So I'll say Hall has more, but they have to use Braylon Allen more than they did.
I do care about it. I think Allen should be their feature back right now. I think he's got a lot of potential, and Hall, whatever for whatever reason, is in a funk. And I think you're wasting plays by giving him the ball unless you try a couple of sweeps with him. Other than that, I would not try anything up the middle with him. To me, it's just a waste of a play. The question is who's going to get it. I think this is a very interesting moment. Um, I I think it's going to be close, and I don't think it should be. I think maybe it'll still be Hall, and I think it's a mistake, and I think that it's the beginning of the end if he keeps doing that.
It's like what you said. It's like Robert Sala and Nathaniel Hackett are the only people on earth that don't see what everybody else sees. It's just amazing. The only thing I'll say, though, also, though I had said before, I want to see Allen go in motion out of backfield. Right now, I think Hall is a bigger threat as a receiver.
Agree. Yeah, I agree. Yeah,
So,
use him that way. I was just talking about rushing
right.
attempts. So
Yes, I understand that. All right, Ralph, what receiver, tight end or running back gets the most passing targets for the Jets? I know
it's
who
a,
I'd like, but
yeah, it's a
go ahead,
tough
Ralph.
question. Yeah, it's a tough question. I'm going to go with Alan Lazard. I'm afraid.
Okay, Alan
I
Lazard.
think he's his safety blanket right
Yeah,
now.
I want Mike Williams. That's what I
Yeah,
like, but
right.
that won't happen. So you know what? I'm gonna deviate from what you said. I'm gonna say it's gonna be Garrett Wilson. I
Okay.
think that they're gonna listen. I think they're gonna try to make sure he has places and situations to succeed. So I'm gonna say Garrett Wilson. All right, Ralph. I'll start with this. Over under. Sam Darnold, 2.5 TD passes. I'm going to say under. I'm going to say he's going to have two.
Yeah, I agree with you on that.
All right. Aaron Jones, 90 yards rushing. Wow. I'm going to say under. I'm going to think he's going to have 75.
I'm going to go over
I'm going to
until I
go.
see the Jets. He's having a really good year until I see the Jets defense against the run to do better. I think he'll get over 90. What did I say, 90 or 95?
90. All right. You go next. Justin Jefferson, 125 yards receiving.
I'm going to say under on that. If I remember correctly, a couple of years ago when they played, actually Sauce Gardner and the Reed did a pretty good job on him. He was well under that. So I think Minnesota's going to do more damage running than passing.
I'm going to say I agree with you under Ralph. I really came down on Sauce Gardner. Am I being too tough on this guy? Because I've heard people say that besides the tackling, he did very good on coverage.
Um, I think, Marty, what your issue is, and my issue to agree also is he is good. He's very good, but he is overrated. He's not the best cornerback in the league. And I don't think he'll be a first team all pro this year because I think there are just other guys who are better. So I think when a guy is inflated that much, you expect almost perfection out of him. Yeah, I think he's a pretty good cover guy. He's at least I don't think he's the best in the league, but his tackling is glaring. And Sean Payton, who's not afraid to say what he thinks, purposely put it out there and said, I want to run plays to make sure Sauce Gardner tackle. And I think they got to get him some time with a tackling dummy during the week and let him learn how to wrap guys up instead
Right.
of, just playing two-handed touch
Yeah,
and trying to strip the football.
right. Aaron Rodgers, 1.5 TD passes. I'm going to say over. I think he's going to have at least two, so I'm going to say over.
Yeah, I'll agree with you on that one.
All right, the Jets 2.5 sacks. I'll start. I'm gonna say no. It's not gonna be over. I I I have to see more, and I have to see more pressure. I just don't see the scheme, so I'm going to say under.
I'm afraid I agree with you on that one too.
All right, and we're going to wrap it up. The game prediction. Okay, Ralph, why don't you start there?
Well, Marty, I'm a guy when I used to gamble, whenever I'd see a team at a certain point in the NFL season that was undefeated, I'd start betting against them because teams do not go undefeated in the NFL. And I think Minnesota's ripe for a loss here. They're about to give one away to Green Bay. And I believe it or not, I think the Jets are just going to bounce back because I think they're going to be pissed off. And I think it's easier to come back from a bad game than it is from a game where everyone's singing your praises. So I'm going to say the Jets 24-17.
I'm going to say Minnesota 27-19, as
Mhm.
Greg DeLeg is going to miss two extra points, and they're going to
Oh, I thought he was going to hit 5 field
oh,
goals.
and they're going to bring in a kicker. I hope I'm
Four.
wrong. I hope they intercept Sam Darnold like four times, and of course I hope the Jets win. If they do lose, it's going to be a heck of a long ride back. Even though Minnesota is the home team, I'm predicting that the stadium's going to be filled with green, more
I
green.
agree with you. And the Jets get a break because this is a neutral field and they get a road game out of it. So they
Yeah,
should be happy because the last time they were in Minnesota, which was a terrific game that they lost, thanks to your favorite kick returner, punt returner, Braxton Barrios. But uh, it's a lot better playing there than it is in that dome in Minnesota, which is pretty noisy. So they get a break. As I said, I think Minnesota's ripe for getting beaten, and Sam
right.
Darnold's bound to have a bad game. He's not in the
Yeah.
Hall of Fame yet.
By the way, the Buffalo Bills defensive end Von Miller was suspended for 4 games. He had some
Really?
domestic violence issue, and yeah,
Oh,
so he'll be out for the first Jet game,
okay, that's a break.
which is a
It's funny. Von Miller, there's a future Hall of Fame or first ballot, and he gets picked up by Denver, and he plays great. Why is it that the Jets, whenever they pick up a future Hall of Famer, he's already over the hill? Like this one now, we have Tyrone Smith, we have Steve Atwater, and then Frank Gore, and Chris Johnson, and LaDainian Tomlinson, and they all stunk when they were the Jets.
well. I have to say, LaDainian
He was
Tomlinson,
all right, yeah.
his first year he was horrible. His second year, I thought he was the best Jet on offense. I really liked the way he played. Um, all right, Ralph, we're going to wrap it up for Ralph Scharaga in Belmont, Mass. Marty Schupak in Valley Cottage, New York. Ray Clifford is on the road somewhere, going from one brewery to another brewery in the state of Ohio. Maybe he's headed down a little south to Kentucky, get some moonshine. I know my.
You're just supposed to say Ray is away for the week.
It's all right. I want to get some
You're really
feedback.
throwing Ray under the bus here, huh?
He's my buddy. All right, until next time.